is up, you guys? My name is Julie, aka @MissSired on Instagram. I have been an editor for the past 4 years, and I thought that I would share some tips and tricks on YouTube about how to get some smooth transitions. So today, just a disclaimer, I'm working on After Effects CC 2018, so my setup might look a little bit different if you don't have that, and I'm just going to share my process. So personally, when I do transitions, I use a plugin called Sapphire. That does not naturally come with After Effects. So it is a separate, what is called a plugin. So it would require a separate download. Sapphire would be on the right under effects. So I use S_blur Mo curves, which is right here on the right side under effects. The other type of transition that people do, and this is like the big divide between, editors and how they do transitions, is underneath the clip. So you go underneath the arrow and then transform, and you see scale, rotation, and position. I never use transform. I used to, but in my opinion, it's just a little bit choppy for me, and I feel like I get a cleaner and smoother transition by using Blur Mo curves. On top of showing you some basic transitions, I will show you a couple of other effects that I add in order to get a really clean, smooth look. I have just 2 clips, both of the love of my life, Catherine Pierce. I have them cut up, and if you watched my other tutorial, The Basics of After Effects, you know that I do not make my base in After Effects. I think that cutting clips and audio in After Effects is personally very difficult. So I have Sony Vegas Pro, and I put my clips and audio together there, and then in After Effects I cut them up. I have, you can see on the left, these circles checked, so I can uncheck them and check them, but I have them on. And another component that's really important is that on the top I have it clicked blue. It will not work if you do not have it clicked blue, so make sure you enable motion blur. This effect, that's what the effect is called, motion blur. Basically, whenever you have a little bit of a motion, it adds a blur, just like the title suggests. And I feel like all editors unanimously agree that this is like one of the keys to having a smooth transition. It just makes it a little bit more blurred so that it looks smooth and it doesn't look choppy. So that's the first thing that I have going on. The second thing is that I use time remap. So I'm gonna check it right here. If you want time remap on, you just click it twice, and then you have this blue thing marked right next to motion blur. I'm not going to go into time remapping right now because it is a little bit difficult. I think if you would like me to make a whole other video about that, I would love to. Just let me know in the comments. But I just wanted to let you know that these are all on freeze. It's just so that there's no motion. I feel like that'd be a little bit complicated. I just wanted to focus on transitions today. The last thing before we get started is that I have a couple of effects here. So on the top, you can see effect controls. I have a preset in animation called Basic. So basically, it adds all of the common things that I use. So first of all, I have 2 S_blur Mo curves, and I will show you why exactly I have 2 of those. I have camera lens blur, which is the most common blur that I use in between transitions. I will go into that. And then lastly, I have S_sharpen and sharpen. These settings I got from Ghost Elena. She is amazing. Go check her out on Instagram. But these are just because Instagram sucks and it downgrades the quality really bad. So I have to add sharpen in order for my edits to not suck. Okay, so for the first transition, I'm just gonna do a simple zoom in. I'm going to go into S_blur Mo curves, and I'm gonna use Z distance. So the way this works, I'm just gonna show you real quick. It's at 1 right now automatically. It just starts like that. But if I move the value up, it goes further back, and the lower the value is, the closer it goes, which is like a lot different than transform. With transform, it's like the opposite. So I'm gonna make keyframes in order to do transitions. And the way I do that is I click this little like stopwatch looking thing, and it makes a little dot. You can't see it now, but if you go down into the arrows, you go into effects and then Explore Mode Curves, you see that there's a diamond shaped keyframe. The way that I do transitions, not everybody does it this way, is that to make a nice long transition, I make the start keyframe at the beginning and the end keyframe all the way to the next clip, to the start of the next clip. So right here, when the next clip happens, I want to do a zoom in. I'm going to make it 0. Now I'm going to highlight both keyframes, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. And what that does, it manipulates the graph. So now I'm going to highlight one of these clips and I'm going to click on graph editor. Now this is the main important part of making a smooth transition. So right now it's just like a very S-shaped curve, but what we want to do is make it look like an exponential graph. So you're going to touch this yellow toggle right here and you're going to bring this up and you're going to bring this across. Now, you can do this in different ways. Sometimes I don't make them touch. Sometimes I do like this. It really depends on the music, and that takes a lot of practice. But I normally just kind of leave it in something like this, okay? And you can see that it starts off really, really slow. Slowly it starts to move in, and then it gets faster and faster and faster, and that's what the graph is telling it to do. Another thing that I do, and I do this with all like of my clips, I mess with the brightness. So I start with 1, I go like a few like forward, I do 1.3 in brightness, and then I go to the end and I do either 0 or 0.5 depending on the look I want. So for this, I'm just going to do 0.5. So you can see now that I've manipulated the lighting in my thing, so it gets darker and darker. I just find that that adds a little bit of something to like the smoothness and just like motion in the overall picture. I always do that for all my clips. People do brightness in different ways, but personally, I like the brightness that comes with Explore Mode Curves. The last thing that I'm going to do to this clip is I'm going to use camera lens blur. So I always use a blur because I find that it just makes it look smoother. And we're going to keyframe this exactly like we did with the other transform, except we're not going to mess with the graph. I'm going to keyframe like in the middle. I'm going to keyframe 0. And whenever I have a transition, I'm going to make the blur like 20. I'm going to hit graph editor. I'm going to highlight my graph, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. So that's what we've done so far. The second part of that transition, which is on the second clip. I actually don't use motion tile, which might seem a little bit counterintuitive just because a lot of people use it for their, transitions. However, because motion tile comes with After Effects and Blur Mode Curves does not, it really messes with the effect, and I had a lot of trouble with like the mirror images and reflecting. So I actually use Wrap X and Wrap Y. So depending on the look you want, you can either do tile, and I'll show you what that looks like. See, tile is just all the images stacked, or you can do reflect, which is just mirror images. I mainly do reflect, so we're gonna do that for now. So when I start the next part of the zoom in, I'll do like 1.5, something like that. It really depends on how deep you want it to look. I'll just do 1.7 for now. And I actually go pretty much all the way to the end of the clip, sometimes all the way to the end. And I'm going to put this at 0.98. Now I've keyed that and I'm going to hit graph editor. I'm going to highlight my graph. I'm going to right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. But this time, I'm going to bring the toggle down on this side. And the reason is because you want the motion to be really quick. And there we go. And then it slowly fades out. And then again, I'm going to do the blur. So this time I'm going to keyframe at the beginning because my motion is in the beginning of my clip. I'm going to do 20, and then in the middle, I'm going to do 0. At the end, I'm going to do 20 again, because assuming I'm doing like another motion connecting to it. And then I'm going to hit graph. And now it looks like a V because there's 3 data points that we gave this tile. So I'm going to highlight the whole thing, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. But another thing that I wanted to show you, and I won't do this for all of them, I'm just trying to show you like certain things I do to make it look a little bit sharper. So I wouldn't recommend that you add this effect, which is called RSMB, when you are first editing. I would get all my effects in, I would finish my edit completely, and then I would put RSMB because it does slow the rendering down a little bit, and I think it is just easier to add it at the end. So what RSMB does, it's a separate plugin. It does not come with After Effects. So what I did was I clicked right click on this gray part underneath my clips, new adjustment layer, and I created this purple layer right here. Basically anything you put on this adjustment layer is an effect that will apply to all the clips beneath it. I drag for my effects, I put it on the adjustment layer, right? And now RSMB has popped up under effect controls for my adjustment layer, and you can see it right there. So now I want to change the blur amount. So usually I do 1 and I leave motion sensitivity at like 70. And basically it just makes it look a lot smoother. This is something that I would recommend. It's something I usually do, but I do it all the way at the end when I'm finished with my edit entirely, like I said. So now we're gonna talk about what is called a zoom out. So this time on your first clip, you wanna make sure that you have wrap X and wrap Y at reflect, because we're gonna be bringing this clip backwards around here right at the beginning. I'm gonna keyframe it at 1, and I'm gonna keyframe it kind of close to 2. So depending on how long the clip is, I'll do like 1.8 to 2, somewhere in between there. And I clicked on graph editor, and now I'm going to highlight my whole graph, right click, keyframe, easy ease. And again, I'm just gonna pull this down right here, pull this across. And now you can see that it goes backwards. And then your next clip, you're going to keyframe Z like 0. And at the end, you're going to keyframe it at like 0.98, something like that. And then you're gonna go to graph editor. You're gonna highlight your whole graph, keyframe assistant, easy ease. Take a shot every time I say keyframe assistant easy ease. You're going to be obliterated by the end of this tutorial, I promise. Okay, you're gonna drag this across. And once you get a hang of like very basic transitions, you're going to start to be able to create your own, because it's a lot of the same things. Like as long as you graph them pretty well, like you can turn pretty much anything into a transition. So you'll get the hang of it pretty quickly. It's just the initial ones that you kind of have to learn. Okay, so the next transition is called a slide to the right. Still use blur mode curves, and there's something here called shift X. Okay, so shifting X means that you're going to the right or to the left. We're gonna go to the right for right now. I'm gonna set it to 0 again. The first things first is you wanna wrap X, okay? So you want it to either be tile or reflect. I'm gonna do tile just because a lot of people like to do that tile slidey thingy. You can do reflect, either one is fine. It depends on your style. So again, I'm gonna keyframe 0 in the beginning, go to the end of my clip, and I usually do like 7 to 800. And then I'm gonna go over here And this one, you want to make sure that your X is also on tile if that's the look that you're going for. And again, I'm going to keyframe X, but this time you're going to key this at -700, right? Because the other one was at +700, so you want to make sure that you're the opposite. And then at the end, you're going to cue to 0. Next, we're gonna slide to the left. So we already had our X wrapped on tile. I'll do reflect this time. I'm gonna keyframe 0 at the beginning, and I'm gonna keyframe this time -700 because that's where I wanna go. And then I'm gonna go to graph editor. Over here, once again, we have wrap X on reflect. I'm going to keyframe shift X to 700 this time. And then I'm going to go over here and keyframe 0. Let me just make sure I did that. Now we're going to do a transition called shift down or slide down. This time, instead of using the wrap X, we're going to use wrap Y. And I'm gonna put reflect just for now on both of those. And then I'm going to keyframe shift Y, and I'm gonna go to the end. Let's say 800, okay? On the next one, I'm going to keyframe shift at -700. That way it starts upward. And then at the end, I'm going to keyframe 0. Now I'm going to show you how to slide up. I'm going to keyframe this. I'm going to keyframe upwards this time, so it's going to be -700. And then on the next one, I'm going to shift downward 700, and then I'm going to keyframe 0 at the end. Our last transition of this video will be a rotation. Rotation is definitely the trickiest. I'm going to show you what techniques I use to make it a little bit cleaner. For a rotation, it's really important to give it a lot of room. I don't really try to squeeze in a rotation unless I have a really long clip to use. So it is especially important that you keyframe in the beginning and all the way at the end of the clip if you're doing a rotation. So we're going to start with having reflect on both sides. That way because when you turn, you're going to see all the corners going. Same on your second clip, you're going to have reflect on both. Now, I use rotate on blur mode curves, and I keyframe 0. At the end, I keyframe 180. On the next one, we have reflect on both. I'm going to keyframe -180 and 0 all the way at the end. There we go. I am so sorry. My neighbors are doing fireworks tonight because it is Diwali, so I don't know if you can hear that. Happy Diwali if any of you celebrate. A very common thing is to add a zoom in with a turn, and I'll show you what that looks like. It's exactly like we did at the beginning. You just have 2 sets of keyframes. So I'm gonna grab, and then here you're gonna do like 1.4. I like to do with like a rotation a little bit of a closer zoom because I don't like the look of like the motion tile as it tumbles, so I might do something a little bit closer, like 0.8 or something like that. See, that is usually more of a transition that I would use. Obviously, there are many different tricks or different graphs that you could do, but my main tip to you guys is to just play with it. Practice, okay? It takes a lot of time. I'm 4 years into it, and I'm still changing up my graphs all the time and changing up my style, and that is honestly, the really fun part of editing is that even though like I'm giving you this tutorial, like you can add your own style to it and make it look like your own. I hope that this taught you, if you were just beginning at editing, a bit about basic transitions. Let me know in the comments what you would like me to make a tutorial on next. Let me know if you have any critiques for this tutorial or anything you would like to see in the future. If you like this video, please leave a like down below, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any tutorials. Bye guys, love you.